Going to get started today. So hello, and thank you for joining us for our webinar. I'm Teresa Lyson, a business solutions consultant at NICC, and I'm excited today to bring you to our next webinar in our Instructor webinar series. Today's topic is AI as a resource for well-being with Skye Mercer. Skye is an HR consultant with over 20 years of professional HR experience. Her diverse HR experience from managing national HR services for more than 3,000 employees in a Fortune 500 company to working as an HR department of one for a 100 employee organization helps her understand and provide solutions to your unique HR challenges. Skye consults with organizations nationwide to build people-centered, inclusive, compliant, and sustainable HR practices to create organizational cultures where employees want to stay and do their best work. If you have any questions or comments today throughout Skye's presentation, please add them to the chat box at the bottom of the screen. There might be some interaction today with Skye, so have that chat box handy, and we will save time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that you have for us. So I am going to turn it over to Skye, and welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Teresa. It's really awesome to be here. As Teresa mentioned, I'm Skye. I live in Eastern Iowa. I work with organizations all over the US. The only part I would add in is I was recently credentialed through the Society for HR Management through their certification program for AI plus HI, which means artificial intelligence plus human intervention. And so that's mainly what we're going to be talking about today is AI plus HI at all times. So we are here. We are at the top of an iceberg. I presented at the Iowa State University Cirrus conference, and Paul Gormley, the person who had headed up the conference, described Google and past technologies as waves and AI as a tsunami. And boy, is he right. So we are in the midst of a tsunami or at the peak of an iceberg, something that is going to change fundamentally and is already changing fundamentally the way that we work, the way that we take care of ourselves, the way that we live. And so we are here. We are at the top point. And the thing that I'll say is, although I've met people who are a lot smarter at AI, a lot of people who are a lot smarter at AI than I am, I have yet to meet an expert. So no one is an expert yet in AI. We are truly in this together. And the other thing I will say, I follow Heba Youssef. She has a blog called I Hate It Here. She's an HR person. She's awesome. I don't know her personally, but her stuff she puts out is great. And she put something in her newsletter recently that said, you are not behind. So don't worry if some of these things are brand new to you. You are by no means behind because we are truly all in this together. So I have a quick poll for you to take. It's at menti.com. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your computer, and you enter the code there. And I'm asking you, how many hours per week are you saving by using AI? So again, go to menti.com, enter that code, and how many hours per week are you saving by using AI? So while you are putting that into the system, I am going to tell you about a little bit about my journey with AI. So I work on purpose as a solopreneur, and I started using AI about 2 years ago. And I have cut my workload, I would say by 5+ hours a week, maybe even some weeks on 10 hours a week. So my work-life balance was really suffering before AI. And I didn't have enough administrative work to hire a W-2 employee. And I ended up starting to use AI to help me more with things, not necessarily as much as the administrative work as others use AI assistants for, but for a lot of confidence building and reducing my amount of overthinking. So a lot of the questions that I will ask AI are things like, does this sound okay? Now, granted, it's a robot, or hey, refine this sentence. And I get input back from it, and it has reduced like overwhelm around how I sound, and it has reduced a lot of overthinking. So I started thinking about AI from the term of like being like well-being. So it for me, it's more than just about the number of hours I'm saving a week by using AI. It's also about how much it's improved my work-life balance and reduced my workload so that I can then go spend more time with my family. So this is the poll results. I'm up here probably now, I'd say the 5, 6+ hours a week. We've got a lot of people here who are in the 1 to 5, and we've got a few that are starting out, which is totally okay. And you might decide after this to try a couple of things that might help to save you some time and some overthinking as well. So I am challenging people that I talk to about AI is like to really think about it, not only in the amount of time that you're saving, but also in the amount of energy that you're saving. And by the way, I think this goes without saying, we're not trying to save time so that we can fill it up with more work. The companies that decide to launch AI in that way, can be a mixed bag because that we're talking about it in the context of well-being today. So I personally cannot talk about AI even in the context of well-being without talking about ethical AI. This is a much shorter presentation about ethical AI, but I feel like if we launch into AI use without stopping there first, it's very problematic. Even organizations that I've seen launch AI without stopping here first, it has caused quite a few problems. So I have a whole workshop on ethical AI if that's something you're interested in. So we're going to talk more about AI and well-being, as well as just a snapshot of what's next. And this is only a 30-minute webinar, so it is not a deep dive, just a brief overview. So you can read this on the slide. I'm essentially of the mindset that this is a tool that can augment humans. I don't think that it should replace human thinking. There's a lot of theory on that. That's my personal opinion. The one thing I will bring up, because you can see how AI, what generative AI is, and it is biased. It does have elements of care that we need to take to ensure we remove bias. But in terms of ethical AI, the biggest thing that I'm seeing that people with even high integrity are using AI for is similar to what happened, and I know I'm dating myself, when Google came out, where folks would just pull things from the internet and not validate it in any way. And before Google and everything evolved to what it is today, there was a lot of incorrect information. AI still can't count sometimes, still doesn't know what year it is. Definitely, if you ask workday.com, who's in the middle of a lawsuit over AI not hiring people over the age of 40. It may not understand age bias. So there's a lot of things that AI is not and that we need to be careful of. But one of the things I see people using it for is things they don't know. And I actually caution people from using AI for things they don't know. For example, I was working with somebody on building a pay table recently, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to punch it into AI. And sure, they punched it into AI, but they couldn't explain it. They didn't understand comp metrics or pay metrics, why the pay grades were set up the way they were, why they were overlapped the way they were, why the range was as wide as it was, how people move through the pay range. So anytime you're using AI for something you don't know already, it will show up as what you're hearing the terminology as work slop. It's a new terminology, work slop, where it's obvious to someone who knows the topic that you used AI to generate it. So I bring that up not because it's the worst case of what I'm seeing happen, certainly not, but it is the most common case of what I'm seeing happen. So in order for us to have ethical AI, these are the components that go into ethical AI. The biggest one that I'm going to touch on here, because we don't have a ton of time, is actually two. One of them is explainability. We should only be using any software program when we can explain what it's doing and why it's doing it. So, for example, Indeed uses AI right now. If you're signed up for their program where they're sending you candidates that meet your job requirements, there's AI components there. We should, as users of that system, be able to explain how is it finding these candidates. And then we should also be spot checking for bias. And that brings me to that most important component of ethical AI is making sure we have a human in the loop. We do not just delegate decision making to AI. We have to have that explainability and that human in the loop among these other components. So the other thing that I'm seeing quite a bit of is, and this to me is something we should really be paying attention to. Some studies show that 50% of people at work, all the way up to 80% of people at work are using AI already. And they're not telling their boss, not because they're fearful, but because they've had no training. They're not necessarily aware of how they should be using it. So most people are using AI already. And a lot of companies, I haven't seen the stats on this. I only saw the stat on the training component. Only 44% have formal training right now. I would love to see how many have an actual policy. And so one of the things I always want to leave people with, even though we're talking about well-being today, is making sure your organization has a policy. Sarah is going to drop this link in the chat for those that didn't receive it ahead of time. And this is adapted from Fisher Phillips and is something that if you don't have anything, I think implementing a policy is probably step one before kind of diving into AI for well-being. So we're going to talk about AI for well-being though, because that's what has brought me to AI is truly how much it's improved the quality of my life. I know that may sound silly to some of you, but in my journey, I've met folks along the way who are in the same boat. What I will say is anything with regard to well-being or wellness is very individual. So I just want to remind people that just because this is something that has improved my quality of life, there are cases where it's actually decreased somebody's quality of life. Or when we look at wellness as a whole, as organizations, you might think, oh, having a steps counting contest or program was the best thing that ever happened to my wellness. Whereas for somebody else, it may have been learning how to set boundaries and navigate the guilt after setting a boundary. So for wellness, it's a very much an individual endeavor. And so I just want to say a blanket statement of take what works for you and leave the rest. But we were at a breaking point as a society. We are right now as a US work culture where we are doing way more than we used to at work. And so for the people who've been in the working world multiple decades, I am looking at you. Do you remember when it used to be okay for you to not respond to an email within 24 hours? Do you remember when you didn't have so much paperwork and documentation? So we have been at a breaking point and majority of the workforce is overwhelmed. And so I think that anytime we've been at a breaking point in the working world in the past, we've developed technology. So the Industrial Revolution, then we developed the internet. Now we're developing AI. And so again, the biggest caution is I don't think we should develop it to then add on a ton more stress. I think we should develop it to get back to where we were decades ago when we could actually be focused on the things that were most important to our roles. So for me, as an HR person, I would say my administrative workload, my non-people facing workload has grown exponentially over the past 10 years in particular, 5 years in particular. Whereas I used to be able to spend a lot more phone time, video time, and FaceTime with humans, with people. And so I don't want to go into AI without acknowledging that we actually increased our workload in different ways that took us away from some of the key components of what our careers were before AI was developed. So I think that's an important point. I met a doctor at the Missouri Behavioral Health Conference recently when I was talking about AI. And I asked him, I said, what has AI done for your well-being? His answer was pretty straightforward. I can now spend more time with my family. So a lot of physicians and healthcare providers are using systems like Elios and different systems that are allowing them to do case notes, insurance work, all of the things that actually added to their workload over the past 20 years. And I think this graphic, it was sent to me by an AI startup owner. And I think it kind of resonates with what I was just saying, is these are the number of administrator positions that have come within the US healthcare system, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, over the past several decades, whereas this is the number of physicians that have been added. And so to me, this isn't only about those administrators, like they're still going to exist. They still have to they still have to provide people services, they still have to problem solve, they still have to do the conflict management. But my hope is that maybe the focus of systems like this and systems like HR people, we can get back to doing what's most important, which is patient care, which is HR services for people. So that's an interesting graphic that I think really just speaks to what I'm saying. So in the context of well-being, I have gone on this journey, these past couple of years in using AI and looking at productivity, not from a top-down corporate-y, we all need to be more productive perspective, but more from a perspective of the more automated I can be, the more productive I can be without sacrificing quality, the more I can do things that I actually enjoy doing, the more I can get back to the work that I love, the relationship building, the conflict management, all of those types of things. And so I really have been following the work of Ali Abdaal, and he wrote a book called Feel Good Productivity. He's a medically trained doctor who now does productivity work on YouTube primarily. But that book was a good eye opener for me, if that's something you're interested in checking out. And it's kind of led me to this thought process of like, how can we use AI to help us feel better at work? So I already mentioned one way, and this has been huge for me. It's relief from overthinking, especially people with anxiety, people who have confidence issues. There is an element that I've experienced so far of using AI that has helped me to feel better about what I'm writing and what I'm putting together. There's an element of me kind of utilizing AI for validation. Now, there's always the double-edged sword of that, as some people will say, AI wants to people please. It is a people pleaser. It can hallucinate. There are real hallucinations that it can have. However, before I implemented AI, I would probably spend a good hour a day just on wordsmithing. Whereas that hour's gone now. I put it into AI, and I'm by no means an English major or expert, but it will give me something that I can feel confident about back to me. And that's just the beginning. I think there's also going to be an element of, and I've already started using AI as decision support or as collaboration or as validation, because I'm not using it for things I don't know how to do already. So it's giving me confidence when I say things like, here's what I have for an executive director or succession plan. What am I missing? And I can feel confident that it gives me back what I'm missing, but I already know succession planning and working with executive leadership. So I'm able to like feel validated that, oh, this is only a couple things that it's thought of that I didn't think of. So that builds my confidence that, I actually do know succession planning. There's a lot of reduced effort. So when we think about like when we first start a task, that is actually one of the times that our brain is most active. And so you think of it as like that initial push of a boulder, but once you get going, things are better. When we start to initiate a task, it's one of the hardest things on our brain. And so like context switching throughout the day, when you start something new, ideating, there's a real thing called creative fatigue. And I've noticed that I have more energy at the end of the day when I'm using it for things like my Gemini gems, where I'll have a project plan template. And I've already told it about the racing model that I use for roles and then like, okay, this is the template that I use for project plans. Make me a project plan for an employee handbook update. Then it gives me what I need. Well, that reduced effort, it gives me more energy at the end of the day. Whereas before, I'm like copying over an old project plan, thinking through all the elements. I still have to review them and edit them, but that has saved me a lot of time and energy. And the other thing that we're just at the beginning of is workplace accommodations with AI. So the one that I've seen come up for AI well-being in the workplace has been um, people who are neurodivergent using AI note taker for auditory processing challenges. And so I think we are just at the beginning of thinking of AI as a well-being support for people who may be neurodivergent, for people who may have different abilities. And so of course, caveat, 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 you have to have the privacy notices in place. You have to be using a reputable product. Just like within healthcare, you have to be using HIPAA compliant products, all of those types of things. The other thing that I think that AI has given me is a lot more access to creative ideas. So AI, tell me 5 different themes for a fundraising event for the animal shelter, like, and then getting these themes that I may not have ever thought of before. So that ideation and learning is also a way to help us feel better at work. And so when we think about what we're measuring when we implement AI, of course, companies are going to be looking at things like KPIs for efficiency, right? KJIs, which are key joy indicators, and that is from Ingrid Fattel. She's an author and a interior designer of all things, and she's also a teacher. And when I think about KJIs, I think about the things like spending time with my family and our animals and being able to have relationship building during a recruitment process rather than granularly like typing people's names into a spreadsheet, because that's what's happened over the past couple decades is recruitment has moved from a relationship based process to a paper process and very much a data process. And so I'm excited about, oh, I get to do things I enjoy again, relationship building, community building during recruitment. That's a key joy indicator. So when we implement AI, even if it's just setting up what you currently have and locking it down to the privacy restrictions that your company needs to have, we could be tracking things in pre and post implementation surveys, like how much energy do you feel you've saved? How much time have you saved? How much have you been able to get back to the things you enjoy doing? How much overwhelm has reduced? And of course, it's subjective and it's based on each individual person, but those are things that we could be measuring by implementing AI as well. One I'd love to mention is Greg McKeown, and he wrote Essentialism and Effortless. And I really like this concept. And as I was going on my productivity well-being journey these past couple of years, this is something I actually have printed out on my desk. What can I do to make this easier? And what can I do to make this more fun? So that number one item before I started using AI versus now using AI, 9 times out of 10, the answer is, well, I could use it to help me with that now. Or I could use AI to help me generate or improve my project plan. Or I could use AI to help me generate ideas for a presentation. And then the what can I do to make this more fun? AI hasn't really helped me with that yet, although I'm sure it will one day as we continue down this path of technology development. But for me, it's things like listening to music, lighting a candle, taking breaks, going on a walk. Like, so looking at work from this element of it doesn't have to be hard for me to be successful, and it's okay to have fun. So that's if you haven't read his work, it's very straightforward, very easy to get through, and very so I'm going to give just 2 brief examples, talking about using AI for boosting career confidence, and then using AI to reduce overthinking through scripting support. So, one thing that I think is important that I don't see a lot of companies teaching, so I thought I would throw it in here, is there is a language in which, and if there's IT people on the call, I will just say apologize because I'm just not as technically sharp as you. But there's a way in which they built the large language models to have us speak to them. So similar to when you do programming language and the computer acts based on the command you gave, AI is meant to have what we call logic frameworks or prompting frameworks. This is the one I use probably most frequently is act as a compensation expert, build a pay table using this data, make sure that you include it all in one table with the range overlap, the range spread, and the midpoint progression. So I just went through the role, the task, the format. Whereas like Risen is a little bit more detailed. So it might be act as an HR director. You're going to be building a succession plan, include the pre-succession planning phase, include the board recruitment committee, include, I'm giving it, the steps to do. And then the end goal is to have a document that the board can use for executive director succession planning. Please make sure it's no more than 10 pages long. So this is the narrowing component, right? And then of course we have things like make it sound more friendly. What I've been telling it a lot is stop using emojis. Stop using the outline feature because you're making it really difficult to format. Other things perfect and you can kind of out. For example, if you say build a job description, then you could say use temperature of 1, and you could go all the way up, I think, 100. And the higher you go with use temperature 10, use temperature 20, the more creative the large language model gets. So you have these slides. We're going to make sure that you have those. And these are just a couple of examples of how people could use AI for career development using one of those prompting frameworks. So just to go over the simpler one, act as a senior program manager at a small behavioral health organization. Review this project plan for XYZ project. Give me feedback on its strengths and opportunities for improvement. Bullet 5 strengths and 5 opportunities. Or this other Risen framework is about look at my resume compared to this job description in my current job. What do I need to do to build a training plan to get to this position, my desired position? So a well-crafted prompting framework can actually help with career coaching, and it's only going to expand too, right? So this is another area that I help a lot of people with is scripting conversations. Well, now that there's AI, a lot of people are using it for scripting to talk about tough things. So act as a supervisor, write a script for a conversation with an employee about how they're late to meetings, put it in bullets, make it succinct, clear, and concise. And then write a follow-up email. And the product that it gives you, again, you have to edit it, you have to look at it, you have to know what you're doing, but it's really, really helpful for overthinking and dealing with difficult conversations. So if you want, while I'm continuing to present, I'd love to hear like what's one AI tool that you're using that helps make your tasks easier or faster. So I have Perplexity. I hear a lot about, of course, Gemini Copilot, ChatGPT. Would love to hear what you're using on chat. What's one AI tool that you use that helps you make your tasks easier or faster? I keep learning new things, so I would love to hear from you in the chat. So what's next? So there are a ton of AI and well-being products, and I had to put clearly out there, this is not an endorsement for any of these, because I still feel like we are at the beginning. I think if you talk to people who are a little less risk averse than me, they're like, we're there. I do see organizations using like AI in their employee assistance programs that can be beneficial in some ways, like with matching you with the type of therapist that you're looking for, matching you with the type of resource that you're looking for. Of course, we're also hearing really negative things about there is no AI approved for cognitive or dialectical behavioral therapy. So just putting that out there. But the EAPs starting to use the AI can help people save time in finding resources and get better matched with resources. So out there to help companies run wellness programs that are more individualized and people centered based on the individual person. We also have coaches, AI coaches that are coming that can provide feedback and help people navigate careers. And so careervillage.org is one that's out there. One AI company that is reputable, in my opinion, is SAP is doing a lot of dynamite work right now in the AI world. They're going to and have done some elements of creating ways to educate people on health insurance, benefits, open enrollment, I mean, all types of things, individualized learning management, so people can skills train, micro learning throughout the day, all kinds of things that are going to be coming and are already here in terms of building well-being in the workplace. So we are right at time. And thank you for those that put in the chat, like Maria using Copilot, Brenda using ChatGPT personally and internally. I love it. Thank you for putting that in the chat. This is my contact information. And if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat and we'd be happy to answer those before we close out the call. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. And Sarah and Teresa, I just so appreciate you having me today and loved being here.